My annotative scaling allows me to keep objects that have been made annotative, such as dimensions, text, leaders and multi-leaders, hatch patterns, blocks, or attributes, consistent in size when they're displayed in different viewports and at different scales. The easiest way to understand annotative scaling is to look at the problem that annotative scaling is trying to solve and how it goes about solving that problem. Here we have, for example, a floor plan. And in this floor plan, the scale for my dimensions is set in the dimension style. So if I go to my dimension style and I look in the settings for the fit, it's using an overall scale factor of 48, which would be 1/4 inch equals a foot. And so the visibility and size of my dimensions look just fine here in model space. Now when I go to a layout, here I have a layout that shows my floor plan, but it also shows two details at different scales. So zooming in a little bit, you can see that here in the floor plan, the size of my dimensions actually will be printed at a good size because this is scaled to 1/4 inch equals a foot and everything looks normal. Now in this next viewport, we're using 1/2 inch equals a foot. So we're able to zoom in on a particular part of the floor plan, but you notice that my dimensions also have been scaled up so they appear to be larger. In this detail, this is scaled at 3/4 inch equals a foot, and my dimensions have gotten even larger. What I'd like to have is a consistency across all three viewports where I can get different scaled views of this object, but my dimensions will always remain consistent size from viewport to viewport. In contrast, I'm now looking at the same floor plan, but this time all of my dimensions have been set to use annotative scaling. Notice that when I go on top of the dimensions, it shows the little annotative scaling icon just above to the right of my cursor. Now it's not enough just to make them annotative. I have to also add the scales to which they will adjust. So if I go up on my annotation panel and click on add or delete scales and click on one of the dimensions, we can see what scales have been added, and we have 1/4 inch equals a foot, 1/2 inch, and 3/4, which are the three viewports that we want to use them in. So now when I change to my viewport, you'll notice that from one viewport to the other, even though these are at three different scales, the size of my dimension text and the size of my dimension objects have been scaled to be the same across all three viewports. They will automatically adjust as I change the scale of the viewport. So if I click on this viewport and I change this from 1/2 to 3/4, you'll notice that the dimensions change size and they adjust to that scale. If I change this back to 1/2 inch, then they adjust automatically. Now, in contrast to that, you'll notice that the text has not been set to use annotative scaling. So even though I zoom in and out, it gets larger and smaller. It will not automatically adjust. To use annotative scaling, it takes a little bit of planning to know what scales you're going to need for the views and the layouts and the viewports that you're going to create. But it saves time in terms of being able to keep all of your annotative objects consistent across all of your layouts.